Arik was not a man who feared danger. From the moment he had joined the human warrior corps, he had faced countless battles across distant planets and treacherous territories. Yet, nothing could have prepared him for the sight that met him when his small exploration ship descended onto the surface of the uncharted planet. Smoke rose in thick clouds from jagged buildings that had been reduced to ruins. The ground was scorched and cracked, and the faint smell of ozone and burning metal filled the air. The silence that followed the destruction was eerie, almost as if the planet itself was holding its breath. He stepped cautiously out of his ship, his boots crunching on shattered stone and debris. Every sense in his body was on high alert. He had been sent here on a reconnaissance mission, but he hadn't expected to find a city in ruins. The buildings, once tall and magnificent, were now twisted and broken. Burn marks and deep gouges marked the streets, showing signs of a fierce conflict. Arik's hand instinctively went to the hilt of his sword, though he knew very well that what he was searching for might not be a soldier at all. Then he saw her. She was lying near the base of a collapsed tower, her small body half hidden under a piece of fallen stone. At first he thought she might be human, but even from a distance he could see that she was different. Her skin seemed almost translucent, and faint lines of shimmering light ran across her arms and face. Her hair flowed around her like liquid silver, catching the dim sunlight that filtered through the smoke. She looked fragile, a young princess caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, and her eyes, which glowed faintly, were half closed. Arik approached her slowly, careful not to make sudden movements that could worsen her injuries. His training had taught him to remain calm, even in the most dangerous situations. But his heart was pounding in a way that was unfamiliar. This was not a soldier or a common citizen. This was royalty, and she was in immediate danger. Kneeling beside her, he gently moved the stones off her body and assessed her condition. Cuts and bruises were visible across her arms and legs, but the most concerning sign was her weakness. Her body trembled, and her breathing was uneven, shallow, and labored. She was close to giving up, close to leaving this world behind. The noise of distant rubble collapsing reminded him that danger was still present. The city might have been destroyed, but the remnants of the conflict, unexploded machinery, wild predators, or scavengers, still roamed. He had no time to hesitate. He checked her pulse and found it faint, but steady. She was alive, but barely. Arik knew that waiting for medical help was not an option. Even if someone came, the odds of saving her were slim. He had to act now, or she would die before anyone else could reach her. Looking into her glowing eyes, he noticed a subtle flicker of fear, confusion, and hope all at once. She tried to speak, but her voice was a weak whisper, almost lost to the wind. Her lips moved, forming sounds that Arik could not understand. He realized that language might be a barrier between them, but survival did not require words. His presence, calm and steady, seemed to reassure her. He spoke softly anyway, even though he doubted she could understand him. "I'm here. I won't let you die." The words seemed to carry weight, even in the midst of chaos, and her eyes focused slightly more, following his movements as he carefully checked her injuries. He searched the area for anything that could help. Pieces of metal, torn fabrics, and remnants of alien technology were scattered around, but nothing resembled medical supplies. Arik had learned to improvise, but he had never faced an alien physiology like this before. Her body was delicate, yet there was something otherworldly about her energy that made him cautious. Even a small mistake could be fatal. He gently lifted her onto his back, careful to avoid the deep cuts on her arms and legs, and began moving toward what looked like a partially intact building that might offer shelter. As he moved, the princess weakly stirred, her glowing eyes flickering between consciousness and the haze of exhaustion. She tried to speak again, but it was clear that she lacked the strength to form words. Auric instinctively slowed down, whispering reassurances. His voice, steady and firm, seemed to give her comfort even if she didn't understand the language. Every step he took was measured. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on him. She was not just a life to save. She was a symbol, someone who might hold the future of her people in her hands. The closer they got to the broken building, the more Auric noticed signs of the recent battle. Scorched marks, collapsed walls, and strange symbols burned into the ground told him that this was no ordinary attack. Whoever or whatever had caused this destruction had immense power. The princess, weak as she was, had been at the center of it, and he realized that she might be a target not just because she was royalty, but because she represented hope for her people. That thought made his resolve even stronger. He could not let her die here, not when there was a chance, no matter how small, to save her. Finally, they reached a small section of the building that remained standing. Inside, the air was heavy, with dust, but it was at least sheltered from falling debris. Auric laid her down gently, checking again to ensure she was stable. Her glowing eyes met his, and for a moment he felt a strange connection. A silent understanding that transcended words. He realized that he could not just protect her physically, he would need to find a way to heal her, to give her strength. And deep inside, he knew that the solution would not be simple, that the next moments would test every ounce of courage, wisdom, and humanity he possessed. Outside, the world was still dangerous, but inside that small shelter, Auric focused entirely on the princess. His mind raced through possibilities, what kind of medicine could work, how to stabilize her, and whether he might have to make a sacrifice. The light in her eyes, though dim, gave him hope. He whispered again, "You're not alone. I'm not leaving you." That simple promise, repeated in the midst of ruin, was the first step toward what would become an incredible story of courage, trust, and the bond between two beings from entirely different worlds. Auric sat beside the alien princess, his mind racing for solutions. Every instinct he had as a warrior told him that time was slipping away, and every second counted. Her breathing remained shallow, her body trembling with weakness, and her glowing eyes flickered faintly like a dimming star. He had faced countless dangers before, but nothing compared to this moment. The life of a young alien princess rested entirely in his hands, and he knew that conventional solutions would not work. He searched the small, ruined shelter for anything that could help, anything that could stabilize her, but the place offered little beyond broken pieces of metal, scraps of cloth, and the eerie silence of a city destroyed. Auric thought about the stories he had heard from seasoned warriors and healers in the human colonies. Some of those stories spoke of rare cases where a human's blood had been used to help save another being, even one from a completely different species. Most considered it a myth or a desperate legend, but when faced with the fading life of the princess, Auric realized that desperation left no room for doubt. The idea was dangerous. He could risk his own life, but doing nothing was not an option. She was too important, too young, and too fragile to be left to die here. He examined her more closely. Her translucent skin revealed faint traces of her pulse, barely perceptible beneath the surface. Cuts and bruises ran along her arms and legs, but he could see that the underlying problem was deeper. Her energy was nearly gone, and she needed more than simple first aid. Auric's training in battlefield medicine came to mind, but he quickly understood that it would not be enough. He would have to take a leap of faith, something that had never been attempted before, something that was as much about courage as it was about hope. Taking a deep breath, he prepared himself. He carefully constructed a small device from the remaining scraps around him, using wires, metal shards, and a small container from his survival kit. He knew it was makeshift and far from perfect, but it was all he had. He cleaned the area around, Her arm as best as he could, speaking softly in a calm voice, hoping the sound would provide comfort, even if she could not understand the words. "I promise you I'm going to help you. Stay with me," he said, and for a brief moment, her eyes focused more clearly on him, as if she understood that he was trying to save her. Arik carefully drew a small amount of his own blood, knowing that it might be the only way to give her a fighting chance. His hand did not shake, though his heart pounded like a drum in his chest. He was acutely aware of the risk. Humans and her species were not known to be compatible. The act could fail, or worse, harm her further. But looking at the fragile princess before him, barely clinging to life, he could not stand by and do nothing. He had to try. His warrior's code, the very essence of his being, demanded that he protect those who could not protect themselves, even at great personal risk. Slowly, deliberately, he began the transfusion. He guided the flow of blood into her arm, his eyes never leaving hers. At first there was no change. Her chest rose and fell in the same shallow rhythm, and he felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Then, almost imperceptibly, her hands twitched, her fingers curling slightly. Her breathing, though still shallow, became steadier. Arik's heart leapt at the small sign of progress, but he knew he could not relax yet. He continued carefully, monitoring every reaction, ready to adjust as needed. The atmosphere in the ruined shelter seemed to shift. The faint glow in her eyes began to strengthen, flickering more steadily now. Her trembling decreased, and her small body, which had seemed so fragile moments before, began to hold itself with slightly more strength. Arik spoke to her softly, offering encouragement, though he knew she might not comprehend his language. "You're stronger than you think," he said. "Hold on. You can do this." There was no time for doubt. Every word, every motion had to convey trust and hope. He noticed her eyelids flutter as if she were struggling to awaken from a long, painful sleep. Her fingers brushed against his hand, a subtle sign that she was aware of his presence, of his effort to save her. The connection between them, unspoken but real, was growing. Arik felt a strange warmth spreading through him, a mixture of hope, relief, and determination. He had faced countless battles, fought countless enemies, but this fight, for life itself, felt different. It was not about victory or glory. It was about survival, compassion, and the courage to act when the odds seemed impossible. Hours seemed to pass as he monitored her condition, adjusting the flow, offering comfort, and maintaining his focus. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, her breathing became more regular. The faint glow in her eyes brightened, and her small chest rose with steadier rhythm. Arik allowed himself a brief sigh of relief, though he knew the danger was far from over. The city outside could still be unsafe, and her species was unknown to him in terms of medical response. But for the first time since he had found her, there was a glimmer of hope. She might survive, thanks to his desperate, risky choice. Then, a miraculous thing happened. Her eyes, glowing softly, opened fully. She attempted to sit up, though her movements were weak. Arik gently helped her, guiding her to a seated position. She looked at him with eyes full of wonder, gratitude, and curiosity, as if she understood the enormity of what had just occurred. She attempted to speak, and this time a small sound escaped her lips, more coherent than before. Though he could not understand the language, the tone carried meaning, thankfulness, recognition, and connection. Arik nodded, smiling softly. He did not need words to know that she was alive, that she trusted him, and that their bond had begun to form. Outside, the ruined city remained dangerous, but within that fragile shelter, something extraordinary had occurred. A young princess on the brink of death had been saved by the courage of a human warrior willing to risk everything. Arik felt an unusual calm settle over him. The act had been risky, uncertain, and dangerous, yet the result proved that hope, bravery, and selflessness could achieve what seemed impossible. He continued to support her, allowing her to rest and regain strength, all the while knowing that their journey together was just beginning. Arik realized that this moment was more than just a life-saving act. It was the start of an incredible story, a story that would bridge worlds, challenge perceptions, and reveal the extraordinary power of courage and compassion. He had made a choice that required complete faith in the unknown, and it had worked. The princess, fragile yet alive, looked at him with trust, and in that look, he understood that they had both changed in ways that could never be undone. Together, they would face whatever challenges remained in this broken city and beyond, and the bond forged in this desperate, miraculous moment would shape the journey ahead. After the risky transfusion, a calm settled over the ruined shelter, though the city outside remained in chaos. The young alien princess, once frail and barely clinging to life, was now showing signs of recovery. Her breathing became steadier, her chest rising and falling with a stronger rhythm. The faint glow in her skin grew brighter, as if the energy flowing through her body had been restored. Arik watched in awe, carefully monitoring every small movement she made. It was as if a spark had been reignited in her, one that had been fading moments before, and now that spark was growing. The princess slowly moved her hands, touching her arms as if testing her own strength. She let out a soft, curious sound, almost a sigh of relief, and for the first time, she looked directly at Arik with full awareness. Her eyes, glowing and radiant, reflected a mixture of wonder, gratitude, and confusion. Arik knew she must have felt something extraordinary, something she had never experienced before. Though she could not speak in words, he could understand. Yet the look in her eyes told him more than any language ever could. She was alive, and she trusted him. Arik helped her sit up, gently supporting her back so she wouldn't collapse. Every movement was cautious. He did not want to risk undoing the delicate progress she had made. She tilted her head slightly, studying him as if she were trying to understand who he was and why he had risked so much for her. There was a moment of silence between them, filled only by the faint sounds of wind moving through the ruined city and the distant groans of shifting debris. In that quiet, Arik felt an unspoken connection growing. Though they came from completely different worlds, there was a shared understanding, survival, trust, and gratitude. As the minutes passed, the princess began to regain more strength. She stretched her limbs, testing them cautiously, and then slowly stood with Arik's support. Her movements were still fragile, but there was a newfound confidence in them, as if she were discovering her body's potential once more. Arik could see the relief in her expression, mixed with curiosity and wonder. For her, the world had been dark and terrifying, and now, for the first time in what seemed like forever, it felt safe, at least with him nearby. Arik realized that their bond had shifted in a profound way. It was no longer just about saving a life. It was about understanding and trust. The princess, who had once been distant and reserved, now looked at him with awareness and appreciation. She placed her small hands on his, a gentle gesture that conveyed more than words ever could. In that moment, he felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility, not only to protect her physically, but to ensure her spirit remained strong. She was more than a survivor. She was a symbol of hope for her people, and he had become her anchor in this broken world. As they began to move cautiously through the ruined building, Arik observed her reactions to the environment. She seemed more aware of her surroundings, her glowing eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. She touched the walls and remnants of furniture with curiosity, as if reconnecting with the physical world after a long period of helplessness. Arik explained in simple gestures and words what had happened, trying to communicate the danger she had been in and the effort he had made to save her. Though she could not fully understand the language, the tone of his voice, calm and firm, reassured her. Slowly, she began to walk beside him, her steps unsteady but growing more confident with each movement. Orcs supported her when needed but allowed her to test her strength, knowing that independence would help her heal mentally as well as physically. She looked up at him several times, her glowing eyes conveying curiosity and admiration. Orc realized that this was more than gratitude. It was the beginning of a deep connection, one that would continue to grow as they faced the challenges ahead. Outside, the ruined city still held dangers. Broken structures, unstable ground, and scattered debris created obstacles, but the princess moved with newfound energy and awareness. Orc remained close, ready to intervene if necessary, but he noticed her resilience and determination. The near-death experience had not left her weak in spirit. Instead, it had awakened something extraordinary within her. Each step she took, each careful movement, reflected her growing strength and the power of survival. The princess began to explore her surroundings more freely. She reached out to touch objects, examining them with fascination and wonder. Orc observed her closely, marveling at the resilience of her species. Though alien to him in appearance and physiology, her emotions, curiosity, and gratitude were universal. He realized that despite the differences in their worlds, the bond they were forming was real, genuine, and unbreakable. As hours passed, the princess's recovery continued. She began to speak softly in her own language, words that Orc could not understand. Yet the melody of her voice carried emotion. She laughed quietly at small discoveries, a sound so light and joyful that it lifted Orc's spirits. He responded with gentle encouragement, using gestures and expressions to communicate his support and approval. Together, they navigated the ruins, sharing a silent understanding that transcended language and culture. Orc noticed that she was not only recovering physically, but emotionally as well. Fear and uncertainty were gradually replaced by curiosity, trust, and determination. The princess, once on the brink of death, was now capable of movement, thought, and even playfulness. Her glowing eyes, once dim and fading, now shone with life and energy, a beacon in the midst of the ruined city. Orc felt a deep sense of accomplishment and humility. He had intervened at a critical moment, but the true miracle was the resilience of the princess herself, her spirit refusing to give in to despair. By the end of the day, the princess was moving more confidently through the shelter. She interacted with Orc, responding to gestures and simple words, showing signs of comprehension and recognition. Their bond had grown stronger with every shared glance, every moment of support, and every small step she took toward recovery. Orc realized that this connection would be crucial in the days ahead. Together, they would face the challenges of the ruined city, and together they would rebuild strength, trust, and hope. The miraculous recovery of the princess was not just a physical phenomenon. It was a turning point in their journey. Orc had given his blood, taken a tremendous risk, and in return he had witnessed something extraordinary. A life restored, a spirit awakened, and a connection that transcended worlds. The princess, now, steady on her feet and aware of her surroundings, looked at him with a mixture of wonder and gratitude. In that look, Orc understood that their story had just begun, a story that would test courage, build friendship, and reveal the unimaginable, possibilities that arise when compassion and bravery meet in a world filled with uncertainty. With the princess regaining her strength, Orc realized that their journey was far from over. The ruined city outside was still filled with dangers, unstable buildings, scattered debris, and lingering threats from the recent battle. Yet there was a new energy between them, an unspoken understanding that they could face these challenges together. The princess, once too weak to stand, now moved beside him with cautious confidence, her glowing eyes alert and full of curiosity. Auric felt a sense of pride mixed with responsibility. He was not only protecting her physically, but also guiding her through a world she had barely survived. As they moved through the broken streets, the princess began to explore her surroundings more actively. She touched the walls of ruined buildings, feeling the texture of scorched metal and cracked stone. She peered into empty windows, her expression a mix of wonder and caution. Auric noticed that she was not simply curious. She was learning, adapting, and understanding the environment in ways he had not expected. Her movements were deliberate, and though she sometimes stumbled, she quickly regained her balance, her strength returning steadily. He realized that her species might have abilities he did not yet understand, hidden potential awakened by her near-death experience. The princess began to mimic Auric's actions, watching carefully as he stepped over fallen beams and avoided jagged edges. She seemed to recognize that he was both a guide and a protector, and she responded to his gestures without hesitation. When he reached out to steady her hand, she grasped it with trust and confidence, a silent acknowledgement that they were partners in navigating the ruins. Auric could see that her trust was growing deeper with each passing moment, and he felt an equal sense of respect for her resilience. This was no longer a simple act of saving a life. It was the beginning of a profound friendship. As they explored further, Auric began to share stories of his own world. He spoke in simple words, telling her about the human colonies, the vastness of space, and the challenges he had faced as a warrior. Though she could not fully understand the language, she listened attentively, her glowing eyes fixed on him. Occasionally, she would tilt her head or make a small sound, as if responding or asking questions in her own way. Auric realized that communication was more than words. It was about presence, intention, and the willingness to understand one another. The princess's curiosity and engagement filled him with a sense of hope, showing him that connection could transcend the barriers of language and species. The princess also began to show Auric her world. She pointed to symbols carved into the walls and faint traces of alien technology scattered among the ruins. Through gestures and sounds, she conveyed the significance of these artifacts, teaching Auric about her people's culture, history, and the tragedy that had befallen the city. He listened closely, fascinated by the depth of knowledge and emotion she carried despite her youth. It became clear that her near-death experience had not diminished her spirit. If anything, it had strengthened her determination to survive and to understand the world around her. As they navigated the ruins, they encountered small groups of survivors, other members of her species who had managed to escape the destruction. At first, these survivors were cautious, wary of Auric's human appearance. Yet, when they saw the princess walking confidently beside him, glowing with health and vitality, their hesitation vanished. They approached cautiously, and the princess greeted them with soft sounds and gestures, introducing Auric as a friend and protector. The survivors' eyes widened in surprise and gratitude, recognizing the miraculous recovery that had occurred. Auric felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that his actions had not only saved one life, but had inspired hope for many. As evening fell, the ruined city cast long shadows across the streets. Auric and the princess found a partially intact building to rest in, a place where they could plan their next steps safely. Inside, the princess moved around cautiously, examining the space and testing her strength. Auric prepared a small area, with blankets and supplies, offering her comfort and safety. She watched him carefully, observing his movements, and then mirrored his actions in her own way, showing that she was learning from him. In that moment, Auric realized that their relationship had grown beyond rescue and survival. It had become a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared experience. During their time together, Auric also began to teach the princess basic survival skills. He showed her how to recognize safe areas, how to move carefully over unstable ground, and how to observe her surroundings for potential dangers. She absorbed these lessons quickly, her natural intelligence and growing confidence making her a capable companion. In return, she demonstrated abilities that were unique to her species, subtle yet impressive traits that allowed her to sense danger, detect weak structures, and navigate the ruins with grace. Auric marveled at her adaptability, realizing that they were stronger together than either of them could be alone. Night came, and the city was quiet, except for the occasional creak of collapsing structures. Auric kept watch while the princess rested, feeling a deep sense of responsibility and connection. He understood that the journey ahead would not be easy. They would face danger, uncertainty, and challenges beyond anything he had previously encountered. Yet, he also knew that the bond they had formed, built on trust, courage, and shared experience, would guide them through whatever lay ahead. The princess, now sleeping peacefully, seemed to embody hope itself, a reminder that even in the midst of destruction, resilience and friendship could prevail. By the next morning, the princess was fully alert and ready to continue exploring. She walked confidently beside Auric, her glowing eyes scanning the environment with awareness and curiosity. Together, they began to plan how to navigate the larger ruins of the city, how to locate other survivors, and how to ensure their safety in a world that remained unpredictable. The sense of partnership between them was evident in every gesture, glance, and step. They were no longer just a warrior and a rescued princess. They were companions, allies, and friends, facing the unknown, together with courage and determination. As the sun rose over the shattered skyline, Auric reflected on how far they had come. What had begun as a desperate act to save a dying life had grown into something extraordinary. The princess's recovery had been miraculous, but the bond that had formed between them was even more remarkable. Together, they were learning from each other, growing stronger, and preparing for the challenges ahead. The journey through the ruined city was far from over, but with trust, courage, and friendship, Auric and the princess knew they could face whatever lay ahead, creating a story of hope, resilience, and unity that would endure long after the city's ruins were gone. The next days in the ruined city were filled with challenges, but also with hope and discovery. Auric and the alien princess moved together with a sense of purpose. The city, once the site of destruction and chaos, now seemed to hold potential for new beginnings. They navigated through streets littered with debris, carefully avoiding unstable structures, and searched for other survivors. Every encounter reminded them of the fragility of life, but also of the strength that could emerge when courage and trust guided their actions. As they traveled, the princess grew stronger each day. Her movements became more confident, her glowing eyes brighter with each step. She began to speak more frequently in her own language, using sounds and gestures to communicate ideas and observations. Though Auric could not understand every word, he could see the meaning in her expressions, in the tone of her voice and in the way she interacted with him. Their connection had grown beyond simple trust. It had become a partnership, a friendship built on shared experiences and mutual respect. Together, they found small groups of survivors hiding among the ruins. Some were hesitant at first, unsure if humans could be trusted, but the princess's presence and her obvious trust in Auric reassured them. She introduced him to them in her own way, a gesture that spoke volumes about the bond between them. Slowly, the survivors began to open up, sharing their stories of loss and survival. Auric listened carefully, offering help and protection where he could. The princess, too, encouraged them, her presence inspiring confidence and hope. Together they became a team, united by the desire to survive and rebuild. Auric also taught the princess more about the human way of life, how to think strategically, how to assess danger, and how to work together as a team. She, in turn, showed him aspects of her own species, abilities, and knowledge he had never imagined. She demonstrated subtle ways of sensing danger, detecting weak structures, and even reading emotions through expressions he would have missed on his own. The lessons they shared went beyond survival. They were building a new understanding of each other's worlds, discovering strengths they had never recognized in themselves. One day, as they worked together to help survivors reach a safer area, a sudden danger emerged. A section of a nearby building began to collapse, threatening to trap several of the alien survivors inside. Without hesitation, Arik and the princess sprang into action. Arik moved quickly to shield the survivors, lifting debris where he could, while the princess used her unique abilities to guide and warn the others, helping them navigate the falling rubble safely. Their combined efforts saved lives, and the survivors looked at them with admiration and gratitude. The princess turned to Arik, her glowing eyes shining with a mixture of pride and trust, and he knew that their teamwork had become extraordinary. As the weeks passed, the city began to show signs of recovery. Arik and the princess worked tirelessly with the survivors, clearing debris, rebuilding shelters, and restoring small parts of the city that had been destroyed. The princess's presence became a symbol of hope for her people, a reminder that survival, courage, and compassion could overcome even the darkest moments. Arik's bravery and dedication earned him respect not only from the princess, but also from the alien survivors, who began to see him as a protector and friend, someone who had risked everything to save a life and had never wavered in his commitment. During this time, the bond between Arik and the princess deepened further. They shared quiet moments together, learning more about each other's worlds, hopes, and dreams. She showed him the beauty of her culture, the history of her people, and the traditions that had shaped her life. Arik shared stories of his home, his training as a warrior, and the values that guided him. Though they came from completely different worlds, they discovered that courage, compassion, and trust were universal. They had become more than allies. They had become true friends, bound by the experiences they had shared and the lives they had saved together. Eventually, word of the princess's miraculous recovery and the courage of the human warrior spread beyond the ruined city. Leaders from both her world and the human colonies began to take notice. Arik and the princess were recognized not only for their bravery, but also for their ability to inspire unity and hope. Their story became a symbol, showing that even in the aftermath of destruction, cooperation and compassion could lead to incredible outcomes. People looked to them as an example of what could be achieved when trust and courage guided actions, and when unlikely allies worked together for a greater good. In time, the city was rebuilt, stronger and more resilient than before. The survivors, guided by the lessons and leadership of Arik and the princess, established a community that valued trust, collaboration, and mutual respect. The bond between humans and this alien species grew deeper, laying the foundation for a lasting alliance. The princess, once weak and on the brink of death, now stood as a leader, admired not only for her royal status, but for her courage, determination, and the trust she had placed in a human warrior. Arik, who had once been a solitary warrior, found a new purpose. He had risked everything to save a life, and in doing so, he had formed bonds that would endure for years to come. He continued to work alongside the princess, guiding and supporting her as they helped their people recover and thrive. Their story became one of hope and inspiration, proving that acts of courage, compassion, and selflessness could change the course of lives and even the fate of worlds. As the sun set over the rebuilt city, Arik and the princess stood side by side, looking out over the streets they had helped restore. The glow in her eyes reflected both life and hope, a reminder of the journey they had shared and the challenges they had overcome together. Arik knew that the bond between them would last a lifetime, shaped by courage, trust, and shared experiences. The princess turned to him, offering a soft smile of gratitude, and he returned it with quiet pride. Together, they had faced the impossible, saved lives, and created a legacy that would endure for generations. What had begun as a desperate act to save a dying life had grown into a story of friendship, trust, and the power of courage. Arik and the princess had not only survived, they had inspired hope, united their people, and shown that even in the darkest times, compassion and bravery could illuminate the way forward. Their story, remarkable and unforgettable, would be told for generations as a testament to the extraordinary strength of trust, courage, and the bonds that connect all beings, no matter how different their worlds may be.